Good morning, everybody. As a youngster between the ages of about 12 and 16, whilst a lot of my schoolmates would, of a Saturday, they'd get on supporters coaches and go to likes of Upton Park and White Hart Lane, Villa Park, Anfield and Old Trafford to watch obviously West Ham, Spurs, Villa, Liverpool and Manchester United in the top tier of English football. I went with a friend of mine to the team Hereford United, who were in the 4th division. My friend had a freewheeler, just like the one that Eric Cozy so likes, that appears in the some of the Mr. Bean TV programmes. My friend had a three-wheeler Reliant Robin because he had a motorbike licence, and in the UK you can drive a freewheel car with a motorbike licence because it's classed merely as a motorbike with a side pod. Hereford, as most of you will know through your geography, is very, very close to the border with Wales, and as a result Hereford United, along with a few other teams close to the border, were invited every year to take part in the Welsh Cup, a cup competition which ultimately determined which Welsh teams went on to represent Wales in Europe. If an English team won it, as Hereford have done a couple of times, then the best placed Welsh team would unfortunately take their place. It's just the way it goes. In the season of 1980 to 1981, Hereford had a particularly good cup run. We got all the way to the final. Now, back then, football in the UK had a huge problem with football hooliganism, brought on, I think, partly by the fact that there was also, fighting amongst the sort of, if you like, the antisocial gangs of punks and mods and skinheads, grebos. Certainly in the semi-final between Hereford and Newport, there had been fighting and arrests both in Hereford and Newport, and in the other semi-final between Swansea and Cardiff, there had been a lot of fighting and over 250 arrests. So when Hereford United went to Swansea, the Vetchfield, to play in the first leg of the final, we simply went to the same area that all the other Hereford fans were heading, which was a section of the terracing that was put aside for the away fans. And all of a sudden, a very large contingent of Hereford United supporters, who were immediately noticeable by their lack of hair. They were the skinheads. A large group of them arrived, and this prompted the local constabulary, the police, to line up in front of all of the supporters. I was actually right at the front. In front of me was a brick wall, which was somewhere between sort of waist and chest height. As I say, the police lined up in front of, made a big line in front of us. The game kicked off, and one or two of the people behind us were throwing various objects. Sometimes it was just a toilet roll to act as a streamer, but there were other more sinister objects being thrown. In the opposite stand, there was clearly, in a lookout post, a policeman with a binocular, radio communication to the policeman at the front, and they would go in and take away whoever had thrown the item that they'd noticed had thrown the item. On one occasion, though, they decided to evict one of the tough nuts, the real tough nuts, and he was not going to go without a struggle and a fight. Wasn't so much a fight broke out, it was more, as I say, of a real struggle, assisted by some of his mates, the police and his mates, getting into all kinds of scuffle. The problem was being up at the front, and as I say, I was only about 14, 15 at the time, I was getting crushed. I was getting crushed quite severely. Not only that, but it's the only time I've ever felt in real danger was the fact that as well as getting pushed to the front, I was also getting pushed downwards. Now I could see the police in front of me, but they were there to hold firm, stand their line. They weren't interested in the fact that, you know, there was people obviously like myself getting crushed. And at the first opportunity, I jumped over the wall to get away from the crush. My friend who came to the football with me, he noticed me, had gone over, and my dad was also with me at the time. Not only had I jumped over this wall, and a policeman grabbed hold of me, put my arm behind my back, started marching me round the pitch, and he said to me, his first words were, "I am arresting you for spitting on a policeman." And I thought, what on earth are you on about? You have just seen me jump that wall in order to try and, you know, stop myself from getting crushed. And that's what I said to him. I said, no, I simply got out of the way because I was getting crushed. He asked me how old I was. I think previous to that he'd said that, you know, we're going to throw you into the van, give you a bit of a kicking, and you know, you'll be in court the next morning. But when I told him how old I was, I think he realised that, you know, I was genuinely sort of 15. So I just got marched out to the ground, and I made what he said, "Don't come back, otherwise you will be under arrest." Presumably for this spitting on the policeman, which, as I say, certainly hadn't occurred. And when I got round to the where we went in the first time, the turnstiles that we went in, there was my dad with my friend, with the chairman of the Hereford United Supporters Club, and the chief of police to say, look, you know, there's been obviously a bit of a mistake. You know, they've come and explained what had happened, so we're going to put you into another area of the ground so you can continue to watch the game, and it'll be more comfortable for you. You know. Okay. That was my really my first encounter with any kind of, if you like, police corruption, or I don't know that it's quite corruption, but you can imagine that other people who have had to, you know, jump the wall, as it were, in order to for self-preservation, have then been confronted with the "I'm arresting you for spitting on a policeman." Total nonsense, but it was just something that law enforcement will use as a weapon of theirs, if you like. I was very pleased to see that in the 2 videos that Eric Ozey did with Mark, that my chicken dance video appeared, and that was in fact inspired by Mark, who had sent me a couple of videos where he'd superimposed Eric Ozey's face on a few things, and they are particularly funny, and I very much doubt that Eric Ozey will ever want anybody to see them. However, back in September of 2016, this is one of my last conversations I had with Herman. He said, "I do not wish to speak to you. You've insulted me, you've called me and my department cowards. I have nothing I wish to say to you." And just put the phone down. So I phoned him back. I can't remember if it was later on that day or whether I think it was actually later on, just straight afterwards. I phoned back and I said, look, you know, basically I tried to explain that I'm calling you cowards, if you like. Yeah, I'm going to stick by that word, because I do believe that you are, Robert, if you're watching this, you are a coward when it comes to dealing with the wrongful conviction of Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey and other cover-ups. Now, you know, and I've pointed this out many a time, I have the utmost respect for normal law enforcement officers doing their normal duties. And I'm sure that it's not easy, particularly when, as I've mentioned in other videos, you've basically over there got quite a gun culture. You know, every time a policeman or a sheriff officer goes out on the streets, as it were, there is the potential for one wrong word to result in loss of life, because somebody's decided to use the ultimate weapon of argument. So I do have, as I say, great respect for, maybe even you've Sheriff Herman, you've been out and you've faced difficult situations where you've been able to deal with them. As I say, I'm not dealing with cowardice on that front. You know that perfectly well. I've made that quite clear to you. I'm trying to make the point, though, that, you know, what with the fact that you are completely denying that there is anything wrong. You've completely buried your head in the sand. You also even admitted to me that when Kathleen Zellner, the month previously, when she presented her motion, that, you know, reporters from the Post-Crescent came round to speak to you, and you were unavailable for comment. And I said to you, you know, why have you refused to speak to John Farrack? And it was you that pointed out that it wasn't actually John Farrack, it was Alison Durr that came round and asked to speak to you. And your reply was a rather cowardly, I choose who I wish to speak to. Now, you know, given that, you know, the presenting of that motion was a huge moment, I think that you just decided to hide in your office. Now, I would like to thank everyone who commented on my post about Manitowoc being in denial. Basically, they've come back and said that, you know, it's not that they're in denial, it is purely fear of a corrupt sheriff department who are a law unto themselves. I'll try and post a link at the bottom to a video I watched last night, which was very good, called The Real Housewives of Manitowoc. I'll try and post the link if Eric Cozy can do it. It can't be that difficult. So I'll do that either in the comments or just below. I also came across an article about the most corrupt sheriff's department in America. It came up with DeKalb County. It pointed out that following one election, the new incumbent was going to sack about 30 officers, and a few days before he was due to take office, he got shot dead multiple times. My hope for the future of Manitowoc is that once Steve and Brendan are released and fully compensated, there will be a full root and branch investigation of Manitowoc Sheriff's Department. As with the football hooliganism in the UK, which has been almost eradicated, when politicians want to do it, they'll get it done. Now I'm fast running out of time, so I'm just going to point out to one or two other people who still don't seem to understand what I'm saying. I'm not doing these videos for fame. For example, I never even ask anybody to subscribe. I've got about 150 subscribers, I think. Eric Cozy, yes, he does have, he recently went up to 1,800 subscribers, which is very good. But he needs another 4 or 5 zeros after that before he can quit his full-time job. Anyway, catch you again soon. Bye for now.